Wasn't that a great presentation? You know, I'm getting the opportunity to sit here, because I was here yesterday, most of you all know, and so I get to hear each one of the attorneys come up and speak. But I want to take this opportunity to share something with you. And what that is that you keep hearing us talk about, you know, the fact that we didn't have, you know, these type of conferences and, you know, the benefits you all having. My daughter will be sworn in this coming Monday to practice law.
All right.
On this whole legal career. I mean, she's a clerk for a district court judge in Louisiana. But all that was because of the fact she lived in my house. She heard me go on and on about law. She observed me. She heard me talk about what she needed to do. Those 30 years of doing that, all that became a part of her. That's why these kind of events are important. You can't really appreciate it right now. But the information you are learning, the opportunity to visualize and see individuals that are sitting up here, that's going to become a part of you. And you will take that with you for the rest of your lives. So it just brings great joy to all of us, because we are all passionate about being lawyers, but we're even more passionate about helping you all to become the best lawyers that you can be. At this time, I would like to bring up Jermecia Beachem, and she's going to introduce our next speaker. Let's give our round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jermecia Beachem. I am from Charlotte, North Carolina. I am currently living here in Houston, and I am the president of the Houston Lawyers Association, which is the local affiliate for the National Bar Association. I've only been practicing for 4 years. I too, like Daryl, had a second, I won't call it career. This is my first and only career. I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, but I did have other jobs prior to law school. But I did want to just introduce myself, welcome you here to Houston. I'm here to introduce to you Donise Brown. She is a graduate of the Tuskegee University. She is also a graduate of the Howard University School of Law. She has served as the principal attorney for Florida Power and Light, the chief counsel sales siting at AT&T Wireless, and she is currently the director corporate counsel of Starbucks. So when you say set your sights high, I think she set the bar pretty high for all of us. I did want to just introduce her to you today. She gives us great joy in the community, obviously doing great work for us. So if you will, please give a round of applause for Ms. Donise Brown.
Good morning. Good morning. I am not from Texas. I am actually from Florida. I'm a native Floridian. Made my way back to Florida about 5 years ago. And as I share with you this morning a little bit of my journey, I'll tell you why that's important. I am thrilled to be here. I have to tell you that you've heard it over and over and over again, that this is something very different from what many of us had when we started our journey to practice law. I've been doing this almost 30 years. I am amazed that things have changed a lot in that 30-year period from when I first started, but in some ways they haven't changed very much at all. And when Evangela first contacted me about participating in this conference, I didn't know anything about it. We had a really good conversation. She sent me some things from the website, and I read and I listened to some of the testimonials, and I was moved. I knew I had to be here. My son's birthday is tomorrow, and I won't be able to stay with you guys till this evening because he may not get over me not being here for his birthday. But I knew that if I had to do whatever I had to do to adjust my schedule, I wanted to be here with you all to talk to you about how fantastic of an opportunity it is to have these wonderful people be here to share with you their story. I'm going to share with you my story and to talk to you about what it takes to become a lawyer. I did a little bit of research before doing this because is it a good thing to do today? I did this 30 years ago, but is it a good thing to do today? To go through the process, to incur the debt, when you hear the things on the, that people are saying in the news, read articles on the ABA website, there's a lot of noise, a lot of communication saying that this is a bad investment. That there is not a good return on your investment. You have some financial people here, and return on your investment is important. It's much more expensive today than it was when I started to go to law school. And it's not a good idea. If you ask a lot of people, they're telling you that there are more lawyers than there are jobs. And that you can do a whole lot of other things for a lot less money and a lot less time than become a lawyer. So is that different from when I started? I came out of college in 1982. So back then, Ronald Reagan was president. By the end of his term, the federal debt was $2.9 trillion. At the end of 2013, as much slack as our president has taken, it's high, but it's $1.09 trillion. So it's a little bit better. In 1982, poverty for African Americans was at 35.6%. But at the 2010 census, it was down to 29. Not good, but better. And in 1982, the number of African American lawyers in the United States was 4.2%. Today, it's 4.8%. So in 30 years, for us, it's only increased by 0.6%. So while this may be an overcrowded field for the majority, there's a whole lot of room for those of us that look like we do. Not to listen to the pundits, not to be discouraged. Our path has never been their path. Our road has never been their road. The opportunity to come out of law school and have the job in the top law firms, it's been there for some of us, but not for the majority of us. And most of us have had to create our own path. We've had to create our own vision. We've had to figure out what was most important to us in being a lawyer. And I implore you to not listen to the noise. But if this is what you want to do, and it's what you want to do for the right reasons, and I heard some folks say, they want to do it because you think you're going to make a lot of money. You may, but you may not. That should not be the motivation. Because if that's the motivation, then you should listen to the pundits. It may not be the best return on your investment. But if it's what you want to do because you believe that you can make a difference, if you believe that whatever area of practice you go into, you can be a person that presents a different picture than perhaps what they've seen before. Because right now, there's almost, 1.3 million lawyers? And only 4.8% of them look like us. There are a lot of places we don't show up. I am a real estate lawyer. I'm a corporate real estate lawyer, and I've been doing this for almost 30 years for major corporations. There aren't a lot of people that do what I do in the world. When I go to conferences that are area specific or specific to what I do my practice, I am one of a few. The law touches every single thing that goes on in the world. There is no aspect of anything. The chair you're sitting in has some laws that regulate how it should be made. The food you eat, the clothes you wear, the cars you drive. There's so much that you can do with a law degree that don't let the noise convince you somehow that you have to follow the path that's been set for everyone else. You don't. I did not graduate top of my class from law school. I did pretty good, but I worked hard. I did not go to the top law schools according to the majority. I think I did, because I went to Howard University, and I think it was the best education I could have. If you look at what they tell you you should be doing, and you just follow the majority, you might get a little lost along the way. Because that is not always our story. It's not always the way that we should see the world. There's a story that I like to share, and you probably have heard it before. And it's talking about a little girl who's sitting in the class and she's drawing a picture. And her art teacher comes to her and she says, "What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher looks at her and says, "Well, you know, nobody knows what God looks like." And the little girl looks up at the teacher and she says, with a very serious face, "Well, they will when I'm done." So, you may not have to follow what others tell you your law career should look like, but you can draw your own picture. You can create your own path. For me, it was different. I was very, very fortunate and very blessed to come out of law school and start in a corporation. My first job out of law school was for the Greyhound Corporation in Arizona. I'd never been to Arizona. I grew up in South Florida. Like some of you perhaps, I grew up in a single-family household. My parents divorced when I was very young. I'm in the middle of 3 children. My mother is college educated and has an advanced degree, but she had obtained those degrees as a working mother of 3. So education was always very important in our family. And when time came to go to college, she encouraged all of us. It was never a question as to whether we were going to go. It was just where we were going to go. And she encouraged us to leave home. She said, "You can always come back, but go see how the rest of the world lives." So, and we took that advice, not understanding the cost and expense it might have meant to her by going out of state, 3 children back to back. But my sister went to the University of Georgia, my brother went to school in Virginia, and I went to Alabama. I started out at Tuskegee. So I knew that traveling and going and leaving what was comfortable was something that was worthwhile and something easy to do. So when I came out of Howard and had the opportunity to go to Arizona, I knew nothing about Arizona. I had one sorority sister that I knew had moved there to work as an engineer for Honeywell. That was it. And I went to interview. I was in D.C. It was probably one of the coldest winters D.C. had in a long time. And I interviewed in January, around that time when you're doing a lot of school interviews, and it was warm. There were palm trees. It was beautiful. They treated me really well. And I was hooked because I wanted to be a corporate lawyer, and the opportunity to go into a corporation right out of law school was kind of unique. I moved there that May. I got off the plane. It was close to 100 degrees. It was hot. I mean hot in a different kind of hot. Very different from a South Florida hot. And I thought, this is going to be different. I wasn't the first African-American lawyer working for Greyhound, but I was the only African-American female at the time. I was the youngest. Part of why I was fortunate enough to get that job is that they had a lot of very senior people working at the time and thought it was I was sort of a project. They decided that they needed a younger attorney to kind of do some of that grunt work that after you get a little bit older you don't want to do. So I went there and I did a little bit of everything. I was never too important or too proud to take on any work that was given to me. And I did that for several years. In my 30-year career, that was the first job I interviewed for. And I did, and all the jobs I had after that, I only interviewed for one other, and where I had to go seek it out, let me rephrase that, where I went on a job hunt. I worked there for 3 years, helped to sell off quite a few of their bus properties, working with our outside counsel, Winston & Strawn. Worked with them a lot. A few years later, they decided they were opening an office in Arizona, and I got a phone call asking if I was interested in becoming an associate. Now, I didn't graduate at the top of my class, but I worked really hard. Winston & Strawn was a very prominent and still is law firm. And straight out of law school, I may not have gotten an opportunity to go work for them. But because I worked with, they were our outside counsel, I worked very closely with their senior real estate counsel. When they began to open their office and look for associates in Arizona, I got the opportunity, I got a phone call. And I talked to my general counsel, who was my mentor at the time and stayed my mentor for a number of years, and said, should I do this? Should I leave this job and go into a law firm? And he was like, you should have that experience. It's important for you to get that experience. And so I did. Did I enjoy being in the law firm? Not really. It was a little different, especially having started in a corporation. I had to bill hours, I had to do a bunch of stuff that was very different than a corporate job, but I did it. And And I tell you that because you may not always do things in this process that are easy. You may not always do things in this process that are comfortable, but you gotta do things that will help you grow and help you make a difference. When I went to Arizona, I don't know what the population is there now. I don't know if anyone here is from Arizona, but it was about 3% African American. And there were days when, other than the people that I saw in my office and on BET, I saw no one. Days and days and days, no one that looked like me. You know, and sometimes you take comfort because a lot of, in our world, it's the people that might work in the cafeteria or do the cleaning, but you build those relationships because they look like you and you have something in common. They were not African American either. It was different, you know, it was closer to Mexico, so those jobs were taken up by the people. But I would never trade that experience. I would never trade that opportunity. And I share that with you because oftentimes I see people, and I know a lot of people here from Texas, and I'm not encouraging you not to stay in the good state of Texas, but your opportunities may be somewhere else. You can always go back home. Your opportunities may come for you somewhere else, and that somewhere else may not be. We all want to be in the cool states. We all want to be in DC and Atlanta and Dallas and Miami. Those are wonderful places to be. But your job may be in North Dakota to get you started. Okay. Your job may be somewhere very far. We have, you know, the Walter here from Walmart. It may be in Arkansas. You know, it may not be a place that's so popular that people want to go to, but those opportunities can be life-changing. My going to Arizona was wonderful. It was life-changing. It presented me with an opportunity to learn and grow and do some things that I would have never had the opportunity to do. And then I got to come home. After about 3.5 years, I had enough, and I decided I had to figure out something else and I wanted to go home. So I interviewed. So my first interview for a job where I had to interview was in law school. And my second time was when I left Arizona to go back to Florida. And I wanted to return to Florida, so I had to start interviewing for jobs. And I went to Florida Power and Light Company. You may know it in Texas as Nextra, because they have a presence here now. They are probably the third largest investor-owned utility in the United States. When I went there, I was the first and only, for my 9 years there, African-American lawyer. It was quite different. It was a southern utility in every aspect of the word. But I went there. I was happy to be home. I was happy to be working. It was a good job to have. It was a hard job to have, but I did it. And there were some experiences I had there that I used to think, I'm thinking this might be kind of like a plantation thing going on here. Because it was, you know, it was different. It was different. There were people that refer to me as gal, and I'm thinking, I'm a lawyer. I have more education than these folks that are talking to me this way. But you know what? I worked through it. I was always professional. I always worked hard. My general counsel said to me once, you know, you can't go home. I said, I will. When everything is done. I was there early, I stayed there late. And I figured out that when I figured out my path and everything that I wanted, I would sit and I would talk and I would talk and say, okay, how did you get here? And what does it take to get this rating? And I would make the notes and I write down the date that we had our conversation, and then I would start my plan. And I would start doing all those things that they told me that I should do to go from point A to point B. So when my reviews would come around, and I had this one person that was a supervisor for me that I think didn't like black folk a whole lot, and not overtly, but some implicit bias kind of things. But I had gotten my plan. I had sat the year before for my review, and I said, okay, this rating is not exactly what I expected, so what would I have had to do to get a different rating? And she told me, and I made notes. I never, ever went into a meeting, and I don't today, without making notes. You should always make notes. And you should use those notes and remember those notes. So I wrote the date of our conversation, and I made my notes, and I wrote down every single thing that she said I should do to go to step B. So a year later, I was sitting in our review. I had my examples. that I made those notes about to go from step A to step B. We said in our review, I got the same grade I got the year before. So I said, well, last year this time, you told me this, so I did this. You told me that, and I did that. And we went through the whole thing, and I was never, ever inappropriate in my discussion. That's just not my personality. I'm pretty laid back and, kind of casual about it, and we talked about it, and I went through everything. And she was saying, well, you just don't understand. We only have this amount of money to do this with, and if you're in corporate America, you hear that a lot because everything is sort of balanced and benchmarked. And I was like, I understand that, and as I became a supervisor years later, I understood that you couldn't always give everybody the rating they might deserve, but at that point, she should have told me that the year before, because she told me X, I did X, I wanted X results. And when that was done, I got X results. We had an adjustment. And when I got ready to leave that job, and she was my reference, and she became my reference, and she became my biggest advocate, because her thing was she works hard, and she advocates for herself and for others. And that's what you should do. When you get in this profession, you should not only advocate for yourself, but you should advocate for others. That was the second and only job I went after. I was working there. I met people in the job that I worked in when they started doing wireless work years after that. And the other side of the table, they began to look for a lawyer to do some real estate work with cell-siting, because I started doing that for the utility. And I got a phone call saying, hey, we're looking for a lawyer. Would you be interested in interviewing? And I shared that because someone said earlier, start networking. And even when someone's your adversary, you treat them with respect. You treat them with consideration, because they may be your boss the next time. And when they were looking to hire someone to run the office for AT&T Wireless in Florida, in the regional office, which is where I was located, I got a phone call and said, we think you might be interested in this. And I did that. That job took me to New Jersey. Remember I said you can't always stay in your comfort zone, so I had to move my family around a little bit. And from New Jersey, it took me to Atlanta when we merged with Singular, and some of the folks that I knew that didn't make it over to the merger went to Starbucks. And when Starbucks got ready to open an office in Atlanta, I got a phone call saying, hey, we're getting ready to open an office in Atlanta, and we're going to be doing some real estate work. We're going to set up a real estate team. I think you'd be great for this job. Are you interested? And my one question at that point was, do I have to move? Because I really was not interested in moving. I have kids, and their life was starting, and my husband was probably at the point where moving with me again might not have been a good idea. It might have been a little challenge to our marriage. So it said, no, well, the job was right here in Atlanta. So I started with Starbucks in Atlanta, and then my husband decided he wanted to move. And he wanted to return to Florida. And I called my general counsel, and I said, I'm not calling to say I'm quitting. I'm calling to say that my husband is moving to Florida, and I'm probably going to have to go with him. At the time, I was in the process of actually hiring a lawyer to work on my team in Florida. And her response, Paula Boggs, who was our general counsel, who I love dearly, she's now retired, and we have another wonderful general counsel, Lucy Helm, said, what's the problem? Just flip the job. You go there and hire the person here. That comes from working hard. That comes from taking the extra steps and doing the things that people tell you to do. And work hard. I work hard. I've been working hard for 30 years. I work around my children's schedule. And sometimes when people work with me, I say, because I send you an email at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I do not expect you to respond to it. That's just the time I have to do it. But you are right now, starting out, building your brand, making decisions, making choices. And my path was clearly not the path that's most popular. My path is clearly not the path that you hear about. The job I do is not the job. I don't litigate. I've been in courtrooms, but I'm usually an observer, or I'm at the table as counsel table. I do some mediation stuff. That's never been my interest. My husband's a litigator. I am not. I'm a negotiator. I negotiate deals, and I enjoy it tremendously. It's not something that I knew anything about. Nobody in my family had ever done what I'm doing. But choose a path uncharted. Create your own path. Draw your own picture. Don't listen to the pundits. This is a phenomenal career to have, But if you're in it to be the next Olympia Pope, if you're in it to make a whole lot of money, I'm telling you, don't do it. Figure out something else to do, because that may not turn out the way you think it's going to turn out. But if you're in it because you believe you can make a difference in whatever you're doing, if you believe you can make a difference and create a different footprint for people to see an African American in a role that they may have never seen them in before, then I implore you to stay the course.